Welcome to another analysis on The Glass Castle by Janet Walls. Today's focus is using the feminist literary theory to examine the underlying messages shown in this novel and really deepen the understanding of the characters. Before delving in, it's important to understand the basics of the feminist theory so that it can be applied in the right context and in a rightful manner. So what exactly is it? The feminist theory is a major branch of theory in sociology that shines light on social problems, trends, and issues that are often overlooked or misidentified in society. Key areas of focus within feminist theory include discrimination and exclusion on the basis of sex and gender. Objectification, oppression, gender roles, and stereotypes are often the most discussed topics in this theory.
Finally, start the critical approach. It's essential to note down the setting and the time because it provides insight as to what life was like for the average man and the average woman. This story takes place in various states, including Nevada, California, West Virginia, Arizona, and New York City around 1950s to early 2000s. The traditional roles of women include domestic work, taking care of the children, and almost all household chores. The norm was that the woman stays at home, but depending on the husband's income and mindset, some women did have a job. On the other hand, men were at the top of the household. They were decision makers and they provided for food, clothing, and other necessities that the family would need to survive.
When examining the parental roles of Rosemary Walls and Rex Walls, it can be said that their household roles are actually reversed compared to the traditional norms. Rosemary is portrayed as a woman who believes in independence and feels that each individual should be self-reliant regardless of their age. Rosemary likes to encourage self-sufficiency in all living creatures. Now, as much as this can be interpreted as her character, the underlying message relates to the norm of women and their duty to provide for their children. The typical female would ensure that the children do not have to do as much work, but Rosemary completely deviates from this because she's encouraging them to do the utmost work they can. On the contrary, Rex Walls makes a decision which does correspond to his traditional role as a father. However, he more so takes on the mother's role as well, through intuition. For instance, when the family is at their most critical state, the kids have to go hungry for days on end, and Rosemary couldn't care less. She actually accuses the children of being selfish for eating food. This is when Rex steps in, being the mother figure and portraying the caring side which should naturally be embedded into the mother. Rex says, "No child of mine has to go hungry. Don't you kids worry about a thing." This shows the nurturing role that Rex plays, and ultimately this impacts Janet's view due to her close proximity to both of the characters. As she matures, Janet starts to see her mother as careless, selfish, and attentive towards her art only. For example, Janet mentions that Rosemary doesn't like cooking much, and she believes that making a painting that will last forever is far more important than making a meal that will be gone in an hour. Again, this can directly be tied into the central image of Rosemary, who does not fulfill the traditional role of a woman and mother in the household. Throughout the novel, in certain parts, women are seen as sexual objects. For example, the women from the Green Lantern are seen as prostitutes, and when Janet finds out about this, she isn't fully aware of the truth, and she doesn't discover it until a boy later confronts her about it. All Janet knows is that the lantern has women wearing bathing suits or short dresses who sit or lay out on the porch, waving at the cars that drive by. Cars would stop in front, and men would get out and duck inside. Rosemary doesn't really go into the details about Green Lantern, and this ultimately leads to Janet being curious to unravel the irresistible mystery. She finds out through her own case of harassment from a boy named Billy Deal, who is a juvenile delinquent. He mentions the Green Lantern and tries to take advantage of Janet. He asks, "You know what they do at the Green Lantern, don't you?" He later proceeds to say, "The women are nice to the men." Considering the young age of Billy, it shows that the mindsets, perception, and stereotypes which already start to build up a toxic image in youth regarding women. The fact that Billy can dehumanize women and already start to show Janet her place and what she should be doing by comparing her to the women who work at Green Lantern is not only downright disgusting, but it actually shows the ugly truth as to how women were seen during this time, without any respect whatsoever. I mean, even young boys tried to pounce like a predator onto a female. The second harassment case that Janet faces is at her workplace, the jewelry store, and his owner, Mr. Becker. He shows direct forms of harassment, and it shows the oppression that Janet is already facing at such a young age. She quotes, "Mr. Becker got so randy that he came behind me while I was cleaning the display case and rubbed up against my backside. I'd pull his hands off and walk away without saying a word, and then his horned dog would return to the television as if nothing had happened." When this occurred, Janet was only 13 years old, and at such a young age she had to remain silent and swallow her dignity. After a few harassment instances from Mr. Becker and her Uncle Jim, who gropes her when nobody is watching, Rosemary detects something is wrong by looking at Janet and then asks if Janet is okay. Janet shrugs, and Rosemary proceeds to say, "Well, there you go. Sexual assault is a crime of perception. If you don't think you're hurt, then you aren't." So many women make such a big deal out of these things, but you're stronger than that. As a reader and from a critical feminist perspective, there are so many things wrong with what Rosemary said. Firstly, she's teaching her daughter to keep her mouth shut, swallow her pride, dignity, honor, and self-respect to give into oppression and behave as if she was the helpless prey and the senseless act that those men did. Secondly, Rosemary is regarding women and their voices as something which isn't a big deal. She's labeling sexual harassment as a mere perception. Rosemary can be seen as a weak and incompassionate woman in this case who is not empowering to anyone. She's seen as a disgrace. There might be reasons to why she's saying this, but the fact that she's telling her daughter to forget sexual harassment is like trying to tell a person to remember someone they never even met. It simply just can't be done. The reason that I say Jenna is able to destroy oppressive atmospheres is because she can defy gender stereotypes due to her incredibly solid character. For instance, Jenna stands up to her father when he is punishing her for back-talking her mom. Although she knows the consequences would not be in her favor and they could be quite brutal, she puts up a fight, which creates a stepping stone to her future as a brave girl. Another example is when Janet takes on the role of being head of the household while her mother is out teaching. She proves her strong female character again by confronting her father about stealing money. She realizes how difficult it is to stand up to a man, and she states, "Being a strong woman is harder than I thought." And as the last test to prove her empowering femininity, she buckles up to land herself a job as a journalist in New York. Throughout the negative female role model Janet grew up with, she deviates from the negative and proves her worth as an independent woman to herself and to her family. And with that is the end of this feminist perspective on Janet Wall's The Glass Castle. This remarkable memoir is unforgettable due to the lessons and hardships that were portrayed throughout the entire novel. By using a feminist lens, I was able to see the underlying messages and view the societal ways and how traditional roles really impacted the characters. I'm proud to say that Janet Walls, throughout this novel, has become one of my very own role models. She is a strong, courageous woman, an example for all.